So we thought this would be a great opportunity to hear from some folks that are leading some important businesses and initiatives here on Cayman. And I'd love to get started. So Dr. Dax, kind of setting things up here. As we know, Cayman is a group of islands here, a population about 60,000 or so, which is, I guess, as I understand, it's about the employee count of Google as of last year. So you're obviously competing with other jurisdictions as far as talent goes. So tell us a little bit about the success of Cayman over the years. I understand there's probably, about 12,000 hedge funds that are headquartered here in Cayman. Certainly there's been some things that are attractive to those businesses. So I'd love to hear some of your perspective on what drives that interest in Cayman.
Sure. First, I'll offer apologies for the Minister of Commerce, Honorable Wayne Panton. We've had a busy few days over the last few days. As most of you would have seen in the news, the whole Panama Papers broke over the weekend. We've been quite busy. A lot's been said about offshore. For some reason, the Cayman Islands have been mentioned, perhaps very unfairly at this point. But our reputation is one of the biggest features, I think, that we need to defend very clearly when it comes to doing business in the Cayman Islands. We operate a very sophisticated jurisdiction. And that's over the last few years, the last few decades, I think, have been one of the biggest draws for business coming to these islands. You visitors here, you'll see the infrastructure. That speaks for itself. You're on one of the best islands, I think, in the Caribbean. You've seen the infrastructure in terms of the utilities, the roads, the buildings, all very state-of-the-art, very much attractive to new businesses and to global businesses. But one of the things perhaps you haven't seen quite yet is the professional infrastructure, the lawyers, accountants, and others who make this island work the way it works right now, with a lot of innovation, a lot of professionalism, high customer service, being able to work nimbly to make sure that we're doing what's needed to be on the cutting edge to attract global businesses to this jurisdiction.
Thanks, Dr. Dax. And Nancy, you run a business here, BRAC Informatics Center, former HP executive, as I recall. Very gracious in hosting the IMA last year. We had a fantastic tour of your data center, which is quite enlightening. So if you get a chance, see Nancy about that. It's really an amazing tour. And of course, you're fighting against some of the I guess, the myths of Cayman and kind of the negative impact that some of these myths may have. I would call it kind of cultural fiction. But there's business fact as to the reality of operating a business on Cayman. Maybe tell us a little bit about some of the myths that you would debunk as far as starting, running, operating a business here in Cayman.
Thanks. Before I do, I would like to welcome everybody here as well. I'm really glad to have you here and considering Cayman for not just visiting but working here. If you would let me, I would like to make a quick unofficial NPS Net Promoter Score here just by a row of hands. How many of you, based on your experience so far, would recommend to your colleague to come to Cayman? Oh, we're doing great. Okay. All right, so that's a starting point as far as the island itself. And not knowing exactly what you all might see as objections or myths to doing business in Cayman, I'm going to fall back on some of what we've heard as we've had customers over the past 13 plus years look at basing technology companies here. And they're really sort of integrated between the two. Kind of the initial is you're a small island nation. Do you even have the infrastructure to support technology companies? And sort of as a tangent to that, you're right in the hurricane belt. Why would I put a technology company in a place where you might be vulnerable to hurricanes? And I say it's tangential because they're sort of related. What you might not have noticed being here in Grand Cayman is that we're one of 3 islands, and we're blessed with the topology and the geography of having a second island that is 90 miles away, so it gives us an opportunity to build a very resilient, robust infrastructure, but stay in the same legal jurisdiction. So one of the things that we've done is built Tier 3 data centers across 2 separate islands and allowing them to be redundant. The other thing that I usually share with customers is if you are concerned about those sorts of things, I'd like to alleviate your concerns in that that's something we prepare for. If you want to look at future behavior, probably the best indicator is past performance. And we've been through this. We've been through hurricanes. We prepare for it. We think about those things as we design systems, and we continue to run. And our data centers in the Cayman Islands have been up and running for many years, over a decade, and never been down. So I think that's something that we can put to rest. The other part of it is to think about what is the infrastructure you really need for a technology company. We just had some great presentations on all the things Google does and how they put things out at the closest point in the regions. There's very sophisticated modeling done with deployment these days. And you don't necessarily want the same technology infrastructure for a deployment as you do for development. So as you're looking at what types of businesses to put where, you distinguish between where are we going to put the management, the design, the development, and where are we going to put deployment. And one of the things that we've done in Cayman is develop a community of technologists to support businesses that want to come here and develop and want to come here and use this as a think tank. What a great place to bring customers, what a great place to rotate staff through. You heard earlier people talking about the fight to get the best and the brightest, similar to what you're probably dealing with in your businesses. What a great place to say we're going to put you on a rotation through the Cayman Islands. All of those kinds of things are part of the strategy that you look at as you're looking at where you're going to put your technology company. Thanks.
So Steve, with your recruitment agency, we heard about, we've got the infrastructure, we've got a great data center, technologists. Clearly, any American business that's come down here to evaluate the opportunity here is thinking about staff. It's one of the largest costs you have as a business. How would you respond to maybe some of the questions around, can Cayman compete with other talent centers around the U.S., maybe around the world? And what would be some of your response to that?
Absolutely is the short answer. The slightly longer answer would be, can Silicon Valley compete with the Cayman Islands? That's what I would ask.
Some folks here that say maybe
and
not.
So Nancy already did one show of hands. Let's do another quick one. Who in this room would like to increase their salary by 45%? Really? Really? I see some hands not going up. For those of you that own businesses or run businesses, how many of you would like to increase your net earnings by 35%? Okay. Are there any businesses that didn't put their hand up there out of interest? So most businesses and most people. And I think that speaks to the power that the Cayman Islands has just financially to attract people and to attract companies. And by the way, if you are a senior executive in a company, I'd challenge you to go back, if you're going back to the States or Canada or the UK, walk into your CEO's office and ask him the same question. How would you like to increase your net profit by 35%? Because the short answer as to how to increase your salary by 45% or increase your net earnings for a company by 35% is simply to move to the Cayman Islands. The bad news for those of you who put your hand up that are already in the Cayman Islands is, sorry, you're already maxed out. But I think the Cayman Islands combines three quite unique benefits in terms of its ability to attract talent. And what we're talking about here is, on the face of it, I acknowledge that the numbers are somewhat damning, right? We have a population of 60,000, which, by the way, is the same size as St. Cloud, Minnesota, that hotbed of talent. Sorry for any Minnesotans in the room. My wife is one. But and you might say, well, the States has a population of 400 million or thereabouts, so how can Cayman compete with the United States? But the reality is that the local population is completely irrelevant. What's relevant is, number one, what is your talent supply? What's your candidate pool, first of all? And when you think about it like that, it's completely different, because in the United States, you have something wonderful that many of you may be familiar with called an H-1B visa, which has a quota of 65,000 per annum and takes between 2 and 6 months to obtain. So in the United States, your main pool of talent is those 400 million people that already live in the United States. You might be able to get someone from outside of the States, but that's going to be a last resort for you. The Cayman Islands, on the other hand, has an immigration system where you can get a work permit for anyone from pretty much anywhere in the world within 2 or 3 days. Right, Charlie? What's the turnaround? 5 days? 5 days, right? So 5 days in the Cayman Islands to employ anyone from anywhere in the world, as long as they don't have a criminal record and have a clean bill of health. That's pretty much
So,
it.
Steve, I could be working here next week. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Matt, send me your CV.
Okay.
We'll talk.
Will do. Excellent. Dr. Dax, taking it back to you, obviously the physical infrastructure of an island is important. There's also the legal infrastructure. So many technology companies here think about intellectual property and the protection of IP. Tell us a little bit about what Cayman has done to offer the same protections as we might find in the U.S. as far as IP protection.
Sure, I think that's one of the things that we do very well within the government. We listen to industry, we listen to our stakeholders, and we work with them to find solutions to problems that solves your needs. So a few years ago, when the idea for the Special Economic Zone first came up, the discussion that back then was about IP. How can we improve our infrastructure? How can we attract more technology companies? And we started to put a plan in place with the help of our industry stakeholders to design a modern legal framework for intellectual property protection. It's been slow going because it's as you probably know, a very complex area. And because Cayman is an overseas territory, a lot of the things that we do need to go through the UK first. Now, we're coming, thankfully, to the end of sort of phase 1 and phase 2 of our process. For those who you are aware, we've been under the very old UK copyright law from 1956 since 1957, 58. But as of 2015 in March, we adopted the UK's much more modern copyright law, their 88 version, which is updated on a regular basis. And then again this year in March, there was a small amendment that was made to that. But bringing the UK's copyright laws into Cayman, their modern versions, provides a very strong framework for intellectual property protection when it comes to software and databases and other works, artistic works and otherwise. That framework is about to be turned on. The intention at this point is to make sure that those laws then start applying and work in Cayman as of this June 1st. So big changes in terms of copyrights are about to happen. At the same time, the other phase that we've been working on is when it comes to trademarks. We've, for many years now, operated under a system where trademarks and patents were first registered in the United Kingdom and then extended into Cayman. What we're about to do is, from a trademarks perspective, have it such that there's a local register for trademarks, which means that we will be taking care of our own trademarks database. You don't first go to the UK in order to register a trademark. The law is a hair away from being finished. I expect to see that finalized within the next few weeks. And certainly this year, we hope to have a brand new trademarks law in place. So this year, big year, copyrights in June, trademarks at this rate probably in September to be turned on and operational. The next step after that is looking at patents. Again, one of the more complex areas. There are some discussions that I've been involved in so far with the United Kingdom Intellectual Property Office. And I think we're making some headway to have some more changes on our patents in the next year, perhaps. Certainly one of the big things we're pushing for is to allow the World Intellectual Property Organization's patent cooperation treaty extended to Cayman Islands, so those who live, work, and operate their businesses in Cayman can apply international for patents through that system. So those are big changes. They're sort of taking time. Year by year, we can progress. This year, some big next steps in corporates and trademarks. I think by next year, 2017, we see some major heavy on the patent side as well.
Great. So it sounds like you're addressing maybe a number of the challenges that a business would face or would request. How do we resolve this? Steve, back to you. I was curious as to some of the challenges that an HR director might have as they're trying to recruit for roles here in Cayman versus maybe something they're used to at the local level. Clearly, it's not all sunshine and sandy beach all the time here, maybe 99% of the time, but other challenges that a company might face in the recruiting?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there are some complications, but to be honest, the biggest challenge we have, and I mean this absolutely literally, so CML, my company, is the biggest recruiter of lawyers and accountants, mainly of IT professionals for the Cayman Islands. The biggest challenge we have, believe it or not, is convincing people that what's on offer is not too good to be true. That's how good the opportunities in the Cayman Islands are. That it just sounds implausible. You're going to, in many cases, double your net salary. You're moving to somewhere that has an average commute of 5 to 10 minutes. And a lot of the time we might be recruiting a lawyer who lives in London and commutes for an hour and a half in each direction every day. That adds up to 320 hours over the course of a year. That's a heck of a long time to spend on the train. Very similar, by the way, in Silicon Valley for the tech titans among us. It's the highest concentration of mega commuters in the entire United States. So we have that challenge of convincing people that it's real, and that in the last few years, I want to give big props to the marketing people from here in the Cayman Islands, because what's been fantastic, great help to us over the last few years is the number of companies who are actively using social media to tell the stories about the Cayman Islands as a place to live and work. And that has gone a long way to convincing people. Seeing is believing at the end of the day. And when you see it, you know, you can put yourself in the shoes of that person and think that could be me walking on the sand and with my 5-minute commute on the way to work. I think the other big challenge for HR professionals here is the additional layer of screening. Many people in many places all over the world would love to work in the Cayman Islands, especially people like me from the UK, where the weather is terrible. Big thing about coming to, not the best thing about coming to the Cayman Islands, but a big part of it for me. But just because lots of people want to live and work in the Cayman Islands doesn't mean that it's going to be a great fit for them. So there needs to be a layer of screening to say, are you going to be the kind of person who's going to enjoy it? Are you going to be the kind of person who's going to stick around? And I think that's where companies like mine add a lot of value in that screening process. We know the red flags, and we can spot people that aren't going to stick around.
That's great. And you asked for my CV. I just happened to find my CV in my side pocket there, so just take a look at that. So Nancy, we've heard a lot of great information here from Microsoft and Google and Teradata and others, MarketLink. I'd love to maybe hear your thoughts on it. What are maybe 2 key pieces of information you'd want to share with the audience as we head towards a nice catamaran excursion here in about an hour?
Okay, so I heard the between the lines there of that we're running out of time, so this needs to be this needs to be short. I guess two things. One, I'd like you to equate the Cayman Islands to being a digital jurisdiction. So in the future, when you think about Cayman Islands, in addition to it being a great tourist location and one of the best, as was rated recently in the Caribbean, also think of it as the place that is not just going to be a digital jurisdiction, but to be the digital jurisdiction. Many of you may be familiar with the World Economic Forum's measurement of digitization, and it's something that we've looked at as a country. We feel like we're very far along in this digitization. You've heard a number of the points that Dr. Besteo made around economic development, laws, transparency. All of those are things that are part of a level of digitization. It also includes the things of government providing a very efficient place to work, which you might not think about initially when you're looking at setting up a business, but certainly it's something that the rest of the team, your financial advisors, your accounting advisors are going to be looking at. And if you measure Cayman versus any other country, including the US or the UK, I think we are at least equal, if not ahead. We have very significant systems in place to do things online, whether it's registering a company, whether it's registering property, whether it's managing planning and zoning. All of that is done online. The things that some of Obama's struggles with healthcare.gov that eventually pulled in some of the experts in digital services to set up forums to do that sort of thing. We did that early on, and the things that we have in place in eHealth here in Cayman are shining examples of what can be done when you really can put your arms around a country because we're much smaller. And we've taken advantage of that, and that's a little jewel for companies such as yourselves that are looking at where do I want to put a digital footprint that I can develop something that then grows on a global basis. Cayman gives you that opportunity.
So maybe, Nancy, just final thought on future of technology here in Cayman. What do you see for the future, whether it's for your business or the other businesses here on the island?
Well, a lot of that will depend on the people, the visionaries like yourselves, and how you come and take advantage of it. But based on what we're seeing, the early adopters and moving into early majority that we're seeing, we see a very strong base of developers that are coming here, going to take advantage of Dr. Basteo's IP laws and things that they're putting in place so that you can own the technology here and deploy it around the world. And also seeing it as a place that's going to be a think tank to bring my customers as well. It's going to be a lot easier to attract a customer base to come spend a couple of days in Cayman and think outside the box and see the unique things that you have to provide customer experience with your product than it is to go to Chicago or Peoria.
So, Doctor, clearly Cayman's become a very pro-business, business-friendly environment. Between the infrastructure and the legislation you've talked about, obviously the interest in driving foreign direct investment. One of the, I guess, the key tools of that has been CEC and the Special Economic Zone. Maybe some final thoughts on the Special Economic Zone and how that's driving some of this future of Cayman.
So certainly, I think one of the things we realized a few years ago was that let government do what government does best, legislate and provide a framework, and then let the private sector take care of all the rest. And so the CEC was discussed as a way to allow the private sector to run the attraction of new businesses in the technology space into the Cayman Islands. We spent a few years sort of finalizing the framework. We looked at various models around the world. And I think we've built something here that has been very successful and will continue to be very successful because it drives the right kind of actions. It attracts businesses with some very efficient systems, fast-tracking processes, and some clear incentives that are tailored for the kind of business we want to see attracted to these islands. So that's the framework. I think we were very glad to have been part of that process to build it, and looking forward to see more success from CEC as the years go by.
Likewise. And Steve, final thoughts. Long term, what does the long-term outlook look like for some of the businesses here on the island? What a company might face as far as, again, retaining those employees here in Cayman?
Well, I think, as Nancy said, the long term is going to depend on us getting beyond the early adopter stage in Cayman. And if you look at the track of the financial industry over the last 30 years, we could have had a panel like this 30 years ago talking about whether Cayman can compete with the likes of London as a financial centre and whether they can attract the talent to do so, and we did. I think the same thing's going to happen in tech, but a big part of the financial industry here was getting those big names here in Cayman. That's why I came here 15 years ago with KPMG. I had the security of knowing that, oh, that's a big name I can trust when I speak to their HR manager. It's a comfortable environment. It's a global brand. I think that helps a great deal. But in terms of the long term for an individual company and the HR prospects, which I think was your real question, one of the most important things I would advise HR managers would be to immediately have a localization plan in place, which has to incorporate not just the assimilation of the locally available talent, which is very, very important and is very good, but also the workers that come here from day one, you have to make them feel like they're going to be sticking around in the country. You have to allow them to assimilate with the local culture so that they can be respectful of it and they can understand the importance of helping out in the community, but really becoming a part of the community. Without that kind of localization, the problem, it's very easy to attract two kinds of people here, young people and executives. The young people are easy to attract because they're mobile anyway. They're very interested in saving tax. They're not tied down with families and mortgages and so on. The executives want to come here because it's a fantastic place to raise a family, and they can save a bundle of money not paying any income tax. What's very difficult to attract is those people right in the middle. So you've got to make sure that you're training your people to take those jobs in the middle and finding them from the local community wherever possible.
Awesome. Steve, thank you for your thoughts. Nancy, Dr. Dax, please join me in thanking them.